Just to recap, we're speaking about the klipot and sitra achra, two names that refer really to the evil in the world. The evil, of course, that has here emphasized that God himself created. Evil does not have an independent power, but God is the creator of evil. Everything comes from God. And we also spoke about how evil really, in a way, aims to imprison man. That's why the word for prohibition, which refers to all that which is evil in this world and therefore is prohibited, in Hebrew is asur, which comes from the same word as asir, which means a prisoner, or asur means imprisoned, because it imprisons the good. Now, each time, God forbid, a person does evil in this world, he becomes not just a channel for this evil, but also this evil in a way controls him and imprisons him, and in a way does not allow him to be his true divine self. That's more or less the big idea right here. On the other hand, we also said, and that's also important to remember, and then we'll continue here, that God gives us this freedom of choice to choose from good and evil because he believes in us. He believes less in animals. Therefore, they don't have the freedom of choice. They don't have the ability to choose good over evil. They just, act instinctively or in a very impulsive way. And of course, the other layers of creation, vegetation, and then even lower, the mundane, that doesn't have the ability to choose good from bad. We do, because God believes in us and in our ability to always choose good. Yes, evil can be tempting, but God also gives us the power to overcome evil. The Talmud says something quite powerful. It says that that if God would not help man choose good over evil, then really evil would be able to overcome us. But each time we choose good, God is with us. God is holding our hand. We read about it in the Haftarah yesterday. Truly a beautiful Haftarah from Isaiah chapter 40 and chapter 41, where God says, "Machazikya mincha," God holds our right hand. And each time we have this freedom of choice to exercise. Am I going to choose good or choose bad? Each time we choose good, we should know that God is holding our hand. And in a way, by choosing good, not only are we passing this test, but we're also elevating ourselves. And God is joining us in this battle. So it's the belief in God that enables us to have this freedom of choice. Belief of God in us, in our ability to choose good. Okay, let's just conclude this thought with this little paragraph here, page 130, elsewhere. Does anyone want to read? Anyone?
I'll read, Rabbi.
Okay. All right, Jordan, thank you. Yes.
Okay. Elsewhere, the author describes evil as a parasite that lives off man, coexisting with him in a symbiotic relationship, so to speak. Evil exists wherever man allows it to exist, wherever he allows it to feed off the divine life force that flows to him. The divine vitality is thus diverted from holiness, the soul of man, to klipa. The 365 prohibitions can thus be seen as a sort of list of parasites, defining the various ways in which man nourishes evil, from those in the mind and heart to those in speech and action.
Right. And it's another really important thought to keep in mind, because what this is also saying is that if you don't nourish evil, evil has no existence. Evil needs you, needs us to nourish it, to cooperate with it. When we cooperate with it, that's when it receives its strength. Why? Because essentially, as mentioned, this is a very profound idea, but God creates evil constantly. And just like he creates anything else, his creation is constant. Now, if for evil to have this constant creation, it needs a life force. What's the life force of evil? What we give it. When we participate in evil things, then evil says, okay, thank you. Now I have this life force that if we do not cooperate with evil, then evil has no food, no nourishment, and eventually it fails. You know, the righteous, think of the righteous, for example, just to put this very practically. The righteous don't nourish evil. They may have temptations, but each time they're able to overcome that evil temptation, not nourish it. So evil in a way becomes starved in the righteous, and then eventually it dies because they starved it for so long that evil has now does not receive any nourishment for so long, and then it therefore dies. That's what happens. And you know, uh, speaking of temptations, so just to quote the Talmud in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, and I think it's true not just in this this specific temptation, but in all other evil temptations. When when the Talmud speaks about sexual temptation, and of course, sexual temptation could be good in the context of marriage, but of course, outside of marriage, it's evil. Now, what the Talmud says is that there's this temptation, Marivo savea must be oraev, which means that if you nourish it, it will become hungry. If you make it hungry, it will be satisfied. So what does this mean? What this means is exactly what Rabbi Stams is saying here in his commentary, and that is that if we starve the evil temptations in this world, then they'll leave us alone. And then they themselves will die. On the other hand, if we keep feeding them, then they'll keep wanting more and more and more, and then they'll have more and more life. So that's one thing to bear in mind too. I want to add just one more thing, that Zohar that comes to mind. The Zohar compares this evil temptation to a beautiful analogy. I mean, a beautiful, very powerful analogy, because at the end of the day, as mentioned, God creates evil, right? God sends that evil inclination to a person. The analogy provided by the Zohar is an analogy of a king who had a son that he loved very much. He was to be, you know, the prince of the royal court. But he wanted to see if really he deserved to be that prince. If, you know, he could earn it, not just because he was the son of the king, but because he had all the attributes to be that prince. So the king decided to test his son. How was he going to test his son to see if he could earn that status? He sent his son a prostitute to lure him. Now, the prostitute goes and she has a very tough job. Why? Because on the one hand, if she's successful, then the king will be very upset. His son failed the test. On the other hand, if she's not successful, the king will also be upset because it will mean that she didn't do her job well.
Yeah.
So the prostitute is in this catch-22 right now. And the Tazar says it's the exact same thing with evil. God creates this evil inclination to test us. We're the princes and the princesses of God. Now, if the Yetzer Hara, if the evil inclination is successful, God will be upset. What did you do to my children? On the other hand, if it's not successful, God says, well, maybe the evil inclination is not doing its job. Maybe I should give him a little more ammunition. Just to keep in mind that the evil inclination doesn't want to participate in this game. I mean, it's a lose-lose for the evil inclination.
Would it be too harsh to say that to destroy evil, you have to destroy mankind?
To destroy evil, you have to destroy mankind? That's a good question. So the question really that you're asking is then, you know, why evil altogether? I'll put it this way. The Talmud also speaks, going back to the sexual temptations that could be evil. So the Talmud says, really, the Talmud, now I don't know if this really happened, or if it was just more of an image. But the Talmud says that the sages got together and, you know, in the Talmudic times, 2,000 years ago, and they asked themselves, what is the greatest evil temptation in the world? What's the greatest source of evil? What is driving people crazy? And they realized that it was the sex drive that people had. There was too much promiscuity. So what they decided to do, the Talmud says, is that they would capture the evil inclination of the sex drive and encage it for a few days. And let's see what happens if humanity becomes better. And that's what they did. They took that ghost, the source of the sex drive, and they encaged it for a few days, hoping that now humanity will be completely cleansed and pure and better. And it did become better for 3 days, but unfortunately they realized that no one was procreating anymore. So they said that humanity can't continue. So they decided to release it. And the world went back to normal. Now, that's the story in the Talmud. But what is it saying? That in a way, we can't live with evil and we cannot live without it. Why? Because evil is not only what gives us this ability to be human and to be fully human, to be in a way fully divine by choosing good each time over evil, but also in a way, if it's channeled in the right way, then it can be good, could be a good force. Sometimes the actions are evil, but maybe the energy of it is a little bit good. You know, Rabbi Elimelech of Lizhansk, who was a Hasidic master and the brother of Reb Zusha, famous Reb Zusha, who lived in Poland some 250 years ago. But he asked the question, how come for every blessing, for every mitzvah, there's a blessing, right? So we sat in the sukkah not too long ago, Sukkot, there's a blessing for sitting in the sukkah. You put on tefillin, there's a blessing for that. You put on the mezuzah, there's a blessing for that. For every mitzvah, there's a blessing. But for one mitzvah, there's no blessing. What's the mitzvah? The mitzvah of pru'urvut, to procreate. When you have marital relationships, there's no blessing there. How come there's no blessing there? Rabbi Elimelech of Lizhansk, in the typical Hasidic fashion, answered that's because that's the only mitzvah you can't do with a little bit of evil inclination. So we don't want to bless that evil inclination too much.
So I think the answer you're trying to say is yes. If a yes or no answer is the answer, yes.
No, what I'm trying to say. So what I'm trying to say is that evil inclination can be good.
Yeah.
So,
I understand. But if you want to eradicate evil, you got to eliminate mankind.
well, right now, as it is today, but I'm saying there's no point of eradicating evil. That shouldn't be a goal, because one, we can use a little bit of evil to do good, right? Like Rabbi Elimelech of Lizhansky is pointing to. But also, on the other hand, it gives us this ability to climb the ladder of life by controlling our evil each time. Without evil,
But the problem with evil is it metastasizes. That's the problem.
if we don't know, right, if we fall in its trap, and if we don't know really how to control it.
Okay.
But I think there's a beauty in having evil in the world, because it enables us really to grow.
Right.
You know, my father, and I think I've mentioned this in the past, is an aeronautical engineer. I think he mentioned this in one of the classes that he gave when he was here. He says that the only way a plane could fly is with opposing air, opposing winds. Otherwise, it can't fly. Same with human beings. The only way we can truly fly is that with that evil inclination, with opposition. Otherwise, we couldn't truly develop and grow as human beings. So in a way, yes, maybe eradicating evil would be ideal, but it would really paralyze us, paralyze our growth. Yeah. Now I'll mention this. You know, the Zohar says, the Talmud also says that when Mashiach will come, there will be no evil. Now, so then again, then we'll live in a very boring way. I mean, we'll be robots. So who wants Mashiach to come then? Why would we want Mashiach to come if we'll have no evil, no challenge in life? And the answer is then that it's not that we won't have any challenges. It's just that instead of our challenge then being between good and evil, the challenge will be between layers of goodness. So, you know, layers of goodness. So, for example, you know, you can use the academic example. When I'm in first grade, my challenge is to figure out what 2 + 2 is. And then I grow up a little bit, and my challenge is to figure out what E = MC² means. So you have challenges in academics that I have different levels, so too in goodness. Yeah. But that's why, in a way, really, if you think about this, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson of blessed memory, would say, and when Mashiach will come, we'll long for the days of exile, when we had that challenge between good and evil, and when we could derive so much just by choosing good each time. That goodness won't be available for us anymore when Mashiach will come. So now we should really be very excited about these challenges, as hard as they may be. Yeah. Okay, any comments, questions before we continue here?
Rabbi, I'm looking at some of the words that Rabbi Steinsaltz used, and describing this relationship as parasitic and at the same time symbiotic.
Right.
So it kind of depends how we respond to evil. The parasitic relationship would be where evil derives all the benefit from us, and we derive nothing from it in a positive way.
Right.
Whereas if it's symbiotic, then like you're saying, we grow from it, or it takes us higher somehow.
Right. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Right. And it in a way, it's our choice, right? To have a symbiotic relationship, or to allow evil to be like a parasite.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I will say this, that I think it's also a very accurate analogy here that Rabbi Stans is providing, that evil is as a parasite, because that's a different discussion, but the lowest creature in Talmudic thought, in Kabbalistic thought, also is considered to be the parasite, or the mosquito. Why? Because what do parasites do? They only take, they don't give at all. They only take. They don't give. They don't even go to the bathroom. What's the word? So and when you only take, then you're evil, which really also shares the idea that how do you become good, or how do you exercise goodness? By giving. And the more you give, the better you are. The more you're a taker, you're a parasite, the more inclined you are to be aligned with evil. So it's another, a few weeks ago we read about the creation of the world, and the question that the Talmud asks is, how come man was created last? So there's many answers to that. But if man was supposed to be in charge of creation, and God should have created us first, we're the highest, God should have created human beings before that. Franz Kafka, in a very atheistic way, or jokingly, of course, he said that it's a pity that God created man last, because he was probably a little bit tired then, and his creation didn't come out so well. But why did he create God? Why were human beings created last? And the answer one of the answers that the Talmud provides is that if a human being comes and says, "Look at me, I'm the crown of creation, I'm the best of the best," and he does so with such arrogance, then we can come to him and say, "Look, Yatush Kadmach, even a mosquito came before you. Now why? So don't think you're so great. Now, why are we saying even a mosquito? We could say even animals came before you. Why even? Because mosquitoes are considered to be the lowest of creation, of God's creation. Why? Because they only take, they parasites. They only take, they don't give. And we say to this man, even a person, even a creature that is a parasite, that is the lowest of the lows, even that came before you. So don't think you're so great.
Yeah.
To lower, the arrogance. But in any case, so this analogy to of evil being like a parasite is accurate. That's what evil is. Someone that is so self preoccupied or self-absorbed that they think that they're here just to take and take and take and take. You know, on a more practical note, and maybe more worldly note, there's a great book I would encourage. I remember reading it maybe 3 or 4 years ago by a guy named Adam Grant, who's a big psychologist, I think, out of Yale, Jewish guy, by the way, who it's called Give and Take. And it's a great book because it makes the point that in general, society can be divided into two, the givers and the takers. And, you know, in the business world, especially, people think that it's the takers who gain more. Those who take, you know, your money or take advantage of you or take advantage of business deals. And he proves in this book in a very scientific way that it's really the givers who gain so much more. So to be aligned with giving, therefore to be aligned with goodness, is really much more beneficial. But that's on a different level. But evil again is taking and taking and taking. Good is giving and giving and giving. Evil is a parasite, as mentioned. Okay. Any other comment? We can continue otherwise, but any other questions, comments, disagreements? Okay, so let's continue. Middle of page 130 here. Does anyone want to read? Please, Margot, go for it.
Now these three garments, consisting of the Torah and its commandments, although they are called garments of the Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama, the soul, as we explained, clothes itself in the mitzvot it fulfills, each of the 613 mitzvot, and clothing one of the 613 organs that constitute the human soul. Collectively, the 613 mitzvot form an overall garment, which the Zohar refers to as Chalukah de Rabbanan, the garment of the sage, enveloping the three levels of the soul, Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama, from every angle. Thus, the mitzvot are mere envelopes of the soul, garments that it dons from time to time.
Right. So now he goes back to that which he said at the beginning of the chapter. And that is that there are three garments, if you recall, right? The thought, the speech, and the action. And those are the garments that should should absorb the soul and goodness altogether. Now, or the mitzvot altogether. Each time we think good, or we speak good, or we do good, then the garments, these three garments, really are infected, which is a negative word, but are what's the better word? Are absorbed with goodness, with God Himself. Now, God forbid, that connects to what we just said, right? Each time we think bad, or we speak bad, or we do bad, then those garments are absorbed with bad, with evil. Now, it's our choice how to use those three garments. Now, going back to what he just said, that those garments should ideally be channeled towards good. And each time they are channeled towards good, then in a way our soul feels complete. And the three levels of our soul that are involved in this world, the Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama. Remember, we spoke about the 5 levels of the soul a long time ago. But the 5 levels of the soul really are divided into 2 general categories. There are 3 levels of the soul that are involved with this world, and there are 2 levels that somehow remain above us, that serve as our GPS up there in the upper worlds. Sometimes they are revealed in this world too, but very seldom. In any case, when we express our soul and do good, and these garments become really the receptive vessels for the 3 levels of the soul. And that soul that wants to do good, that soul that only desires good. Now, how can we do so best? By fulfilling the mitzvot. Each time we fulfill a mitzvah, then the soul feels as if, oh, something now as something has clicked. I think that's why, it explains why each time we do something good, for some reason it feels good. Now, it's interesting because it's almost like intuitively we know that when we do something bad, it feels bad. We're a little bit embarrassed. There's something that bothers us inside. But when we do something good, then there's something that clicks. It's something feels good. It's interesting because you know, people give tzedakah, for example, and it's not just tzedakah; it's any other good deed. But when you give tzedakah, it's almost a paradox, because on the one hand, you're letting go of your money that you worked hard for you know, with blood, sweat, and tears for so long, and you're letting go of your money, and you write a check, and it doesn't have to be a big check. You give $5 to tzedakah. Now, on the one hand, you say, gosh, with these $5, I could have done many other things that would have benefited me and made me feel good. But you give those $5, and for some reason, even though you're losing out, it really feels great. And everyone will attest to that. Why? Because each time we do a mitzvah, those three levels of the soul, the nefesh, ruach, and neshama, that he's speaking about, the three levels that are supposed to be involved in this world, all of a sudden feel as if they are attended to. And the soul then emanates these incredible, intuitive, good feelings. On the other hand, each time we do something bad, the soul feels imprisoned. Like we said, the word for prohibition is the same word as imprisoned. It feels imprisoned, feels like it's not given expression. And therefore, it feels a little bad. And it just shows that God wires us in a way that, first of all, is equal among all of us, but in a way that we're able to know intuitively when we are doing good and when we are doing bad. But that's what this is saying here. Each time we do good, we basically are creating channels for the soul to come to full expression. When it comes to full expression, not only is it fulfilling itself and actualizing itself, but in a way, I think also it's emanating soulfulness, emanating light. People who do good more and more and more, there's something about them. There's an aura about them. You feel it in the homes of people. When it's a home of people who do good, you feel like the soul is not imprisoned, quite the opposite. It's spreading, it's creating light. On the other hand, God forbid, when you walk into a home or into a place where you know that there's something, you feel like you walked into prison. I don't know if you've ever visited jails, but I will tell you this, and I visited many jails, God forbid, not as an inmate, but to visit Jews who are unfortunately stuck in jail for many different reasons. And I will tell you this, it's amazing to me, and I'm not making this up, I'm being as frank as possible, that very often you walk into a jail and you feel like, there's this bad feeling in there. It's almost automatic. You feel like suffocating. And then sometimes you walk into places that are full of tension, whether it's homes that are full of tension or other places that are, and there's almost the same feeling. And why? I think the reason is simple, because in one place it's clear that the soul is being imprisoned. It's a jail, it's a prison. Another place it's not as clear, because you don't have the same external circumstances, but you do have the same internal circumstances. You feel that the soul is also imprisoned. And this goes back to exactly what this is saying here, that when we are doing good and using those three garments to give expression to the soul feels liberated, and the whole room feels liberated. Conversely, then the whole room can also, chas v'shalom, feel imprisoned. So, and where does it start? It starts with us, with each and every one of us, enabling our soul to really feel liberated, be liberated. Yeah. How do we do so? Again, it's simple. I mean, it's simple, but complicated. But it's just a matter of using those three garments. When we have negative thoughts, let's try and change them with positive ones. When we have negative speech, let's stop that and change it with positive speech. And when we are doing something good, something bad, let's change it with doing something good. You know, very often people tell me, well, you know, I can't stand this guy, or even my children say, oh, but my classmate is so annoying, and I don't know. So I think the simple remedy is, well, think of something good and then speak about that something good. Don't just think it. Speak about that. You said your friend annoys you. There must be one good quality that she has. Tell me about it. I want to hear about that good quality. Change your speech. And then all of a sudden you change the speech and the whole energy changes and your whole soul feels liberated. But change those negative thoughts, speech, that's where it is. Simple, thought, speech, and action. And then you change it and something magical happens.
Does it take more effort to do good than to do evil?
It depends. That's a good question. I think it has a lot to do with the characteristics of a human being. For some people, it does. Some people, no. Some people, they naturally more good. And that's the way God created them. They can't take the credit for that. But I think that the good news is that the more good we do, the easier it becomes.
Yeah.